Before a careless human saved her from the air in the confinement chamber, aliens tortured her for a week. Tasting of sadness and metal, Princess Azora of Aquilon dangled from her arms were shackled by energy, and her once bright blue skin had turned drab from fatigue. Her tentacle-like 7 days a week, her ordinarily vibrant hair hung limp about her face. Of deliberate suffering at the hands of the defense codes, Princess and Hegemon's anonymous enforcers. A red visor revealed a mechanical voice. And your resistance does nothing but prolong your... She was circled by the Hegemon Interrogation Unit's suffering commander, Draith. The other mercenaries stood still as his dark armor absorbed the little light in the room like a predator. Their red eyes and identical armor made it impossible to tell them apart. Izora looked up. Seeing the commander's visor, Drace declared, "My people will never bow to Hegemon, not while I still breathe." When he arranged a cerebral disruptor from his belt, the gadget hummed to life, and Azora prepared herself for another surge of she hadn't snapped after 7 days of suffering. But how much further could she endure? Aquilon was the last free, Your Highness. The globe of the Stellar Confederation is the last line of defense against Hegemon's unrelenting expansion. There was a trace of sincere interest in Draith's voice as to why she would want to preserve the dead partnership. Aquilon stands alone once the Confederation is over, and Azora's chuckle was sour. The neural disruptor got closer to her, but as long as free people continue to oppose your corporate dictatorship, we're never alone. It was admirable that her tight, dark blue clothing had been torn off, exposing her stomach. Sentiment was misplaced, but the chamber was jolted by an explosion, and sirens sounded as the reinforced door broke inward, smoke billowed through the new opening, and a hail of plasma emerged from the turmoil. 3 mercenaries were killed by accurate and deadly fire, and before they could raise their guns, a figure appeared. His face was human-looking despite the fog, and he was wearing tactical gear with glowing orange and blue accents. His eyes met Azura's, and his keen features were framed by short reddish-brown hair. He spun a fire toward Draith, who just managed to evade him behind a console. For a heartbeat, Drace yelled over his comm all units during a security breach in Jail Block 7. React. The human moved with honed efficiency, locating its target with each shot. Arrived in a matter of seconds, his weapon still aimed at Princess Azura in the doorway. He had a thick accent in his voice, and she was unable to identify him. She screamed so loudly that Rowan pulled out a device and turned her off. "My friends, refer to me as Rogue, a former Confederation Starfighter Corps despite my constraints." After being suspended for days, she fell into his arms, her legs failing to bear her weight. "How did you handle the questioning later?" She was readily hoisted, her slim body nestled against his armored chest. "At this moment, the entire station needs to be moved. Is going to turn into a really costly firework," and Draith came out of hiding and started shooting madly. "You two are both dead." You whirled around, protecting Azora with his body as you fired back at him. Mad remarked, "Bastard's right about one thing," as he moved for Draith after catching him in the shoulder and sent. The commander flying. The escape. "I've set up this station's reactor so that if we don't get to my ship within the next 15 minutes, we'll be dead." Azura gazed at him in shock, saying, "This is the biggest mobile fortress shipyard in Hegemon." And Mad's gloomy look told her everything, but not for much. For there are 30,000 troops stationed here. As they continued to travel through hallways filled with red emergency light sirens, she became agitated and put down. Azora straightened only when they arrived to a maintenance shaft, and he questioned, "Can you climb?" with anxiety in his eyes, and using strength she didn't realize she possessed. "I'm the daughter of warriors human lead the way." When he smiled sincere for the first time, he said, "That's the spirit, princess. Let's get the hell out of here." As she made her way through the station's interior, Azura became aware that something was about to happen. Significant, but it was unclear if it was her salvation or just another type of doom? We have. As they round the curve at Hangar Bay 12, a group of Hegemon troops had positioned a cordon, and Company Mad yelled. Around his ship, a sleek, matte black ship with worn hull plates and predatory lines whispered of innumerable Azura leaned herself against the wall during combat, breathing heavily but steadily, saying, "That's how your ship looks. Hope and sticky tape keep things together." "The Phantom has saved me from more dire situations than this," Mad said, according to him, who was testing the battery on his weapon. "Besides, she's faster than she seems." "I'll take your word for it, presuming we reach her." Mads looked at the princess, and even after 7 days of agony, her eyes were burning with resolve. More than he wanted to acknowledge, perseverance pleased him. 8 guards, regular formation. I count 2 heavy weapons, he. "Can you shoot Azur?" He gave her a small blaster from his thigh holster and carefully inspected the weapon. "My father required that all royal children learn martial skills, and by the age of 14, I became an outstanding marksman. He often reminded me not to." Mads murmured, "I'll draw their fire. You take the 2 on," in an attempt to irritate you. "The left flank, then head for the ship's ramp. I'll be right after you. The hatch code is 7734. Before she could respond, he rolled, and he winked in such an unexpected way that she nearly smiled. 2 guards fell instantly as Azura opened fire in controlled bursts. Despite her wounds, she moved with unexpected elegance, and her shots continued to hit their targets with lethal accuracy. A mechanical voice counted down via the communication system, alerting the station's reactor containment system to wail. Failure in 12 minutes, all staff members leave right away, leaving the rest. Mads took advantage of the guards breaking formation in search of greater cover to move his tactical armor forward. Absorbing a quick glance over his shoulder, said, "Go!" He yelled at Azura, who was already running in the direction of the Phantom when she arrived. The slope entered the code, and as the gate hissed open, a heavy weapons expert appeared behind a freight container. Mads dove forward to tackle the container that was leveling a missile launcher toward the ship. Azura turned at the explosion as the mercenary fired, and the missile went wide, exploding on the hangar wall. Mads completed the 3 fast shots she fired from her blaster as the final guards approached from the side entrance. After delivering a vicious elbow hit, the heavy weapons specialist ran for the ship and said, "Start the engines," calling it scary. Control panel near the pilot's right seat. She vanished within as soon as the Phantom's engines started up. Halfway up the ramp, the sound rumbled to life, intensifying into a high-pitched whine that reverberated throughout the hangar. Maz. Commander Draith was standing at the hangar gate, his broken armor smoking, when a plasma bolt burned past his ear. Human Draith yelled the entire time, his aim unwavering. "You've signed your death warrant." Mads retorted, "Tell your corporate masters to get in line because the might of Hegemon will pursue you to the edge of the galaxy." His retaliatory shot struck Draith in the leg, causing the commander to collapse. Mads smashed his palm against the hatch control inside the ship and hurried to the cockpit, where Azura had already fastened his seatbelt. Herself into the co-pilot seat, her fingers moving confidently over the new controls. She stated that pre-flight, complete, and that shields at 60%, that'll have to do. Mads fell. Taking manual control, the pilot said, "Hold on, Princess, this could get rough," and the Phantom lifted from its landing. As Mads turned the spacecraft in the direction of the hangar's magnetic field barrier, the gear retracted, and beyond it, there was nothing but nothing. Azura pointed out that they were closing the hangar doors, a sign of independence and space. The enormous metal plates started to glide closed, which is typical procedure in this case as well. Mads punched when 2 missiles are sequenced into the weapons console. They explode against the door mechanism while we were leaving on our own, and the Phantom sped through the opening. The enormous edifice of the Hegemon Fortress shipyard sprawled out, debris bouncing harmlessly off its shields. It is massively blocking out the star warning reactor in front of them. Azura gazed at the station's automated voice as it declared, "Containment failure in 9 minutes over all frequencies. 30,000 lives, mercenaries, battle droids, and the fortress retreating behind them." Mad, one of the engineers who constructed Hegemon's war weapons, remarked, "Hardening the same devices that shattered 3, the same Confederate forces that killed civilians on Proxima 4. Azura stated in a low voice, "My people have suffered more than most under Hegemon's expansion, Mads. Without passing judgment on you." Face relaxed a little. "Before the proximity alert goes off, we need to put some distance between USO and that station." 3 Hegemon interceptors, their engines blazing hot, had taken off from a secondary hangar and were pursuing. Azura asked, "Looking at the tactical display without being in a straight line," Mads acknowledged that it was difficult to transfer the Phantom, although they are unsure. He pressed the throttle ahead, bringing the ship flying toward a dense concentration of these asteroid fields, just like I do. The interceptor's superior engines swiftly closed the gap as they followed the spinning pebbles and locked guns with Azura. His features changed to a predatory smile as warned Mads smiled. He abruptly stopped the main engines, allowing momentum to propel them onward, saying, "Perfect, let them waste their missiles." The Phantom turned on its axis, now facing their pursuers, while they engaged maneuvering thrusters in a complicated sequence. "Return the favor," he replied, indicating toward the weapons console as he continued to move backward into the asteroid field. Azura quickly located the firing controls with her fingertips, and the forward cannons of the Phantom spit energy bolts at the shots that connected to the lead interceptor, overloading its forward shields. Uncontrollably, the ship veered, clipped an asteroid, and spiraled out of control. "Nice shooting," Mad remarked with sincere appreciation as he swung the ship around, while the surviving interceptors accelerated farther into the field. Launched. Missiles that traveled through the asteroids using the Phantom's heat signature as a guide. He yelled, "Brace!" as he pulled the ship, while Shield's 2 missiles exploded against the rocks, and a 3rd missile remained en route. The missiles sped by, missing by meters, and exploded against a huge rock after entering a tight barrel roll. The rock was broken by the explosion ahead, sending pieces flying in all directions. The remaining pursuer broke off and fled toward the station when the interceptor failed to flee in time and dissolved upon collision. When Mads checked the chronograph, he whispered, "Smart move. 3 minutes until that station becomes stardust." They came out, fled the asteroid field, and in the relative quiet, Mads charted a path away from the approaching explosion. Eventually, took a close look at Azura, observing the fatigue in her eyes and the bruises on her blue skin. Medical kit underneath Azura nodded as he stated, "Treat those wounds more gently. Getting the kit, we're going to a safe location, a trade post in the Vidian system. We can replenish our supplies and determine our next course of action. I assumed you dropped me off at the closest neutral port, Mats," and raised an eyebrow. "Princess, I just painted a target on both of our backs and checked the rear sensors. Size of a tiny moon. Hymens are unforgiving, and remember that we're in together, whether she liked it or not." A dazzling spark lit up before she could react. The Phantom was rocked despite their distance as the shock wave struck moments later, up the view screen. "There goes 30,000 issues," Matt remarked softly as Isora observed the growing debris field. Her face was inscrutable at the start of 30,000 more Vidian. The trading outpost was a jumble of interconnecting modules that hung in space like a tarnished gem. Containers and recycled spaceship hulls that were once a bustling center of commerce. At the intersection of 3 important trade routes, it had been less popular since Hagon's growth. Azura noted that the attractive location was now catering to those who wanted to function outside of corporate monitoring. Phantom went to the docking ring. The ship's medical supplies had been used to cure her wounds, but there were still dark bruises. "It's not pretty, but it's neutral territory," Mad said, marking her blue skin. "Hegemon has no formal authority to communicate docking codes here." Nowadays, there is an unofficial hegemon presence everywhere. He led the ship into a berth close to the outside rim of the outpost, but Thorne, the station administrator, won't stand it. When corporate enforcers interfered with his business, the docking clamps engaged in a metallic clunk that caused the device to shut off. Engines, but left the backup systems operating. "We need knowledge, supplies, and a plan," he remarked, getting up from the pilot seat. "But we must first alter your appearance because you look too familiar." Mad searched a storage locker in the ship's cramped quarters and came out with a small case and a hooded cloak. He described the cutaneous pigment modifier by opening the case to show what appeared to be short-term yet potent cosmetics, and he displayed a set of contact lenses that will alter the color of your eyes. Examined the objects with interest and adopted the survival habit of being ready for anything. When she came out 10 minutes later, Azora's blue. "I'll check the ship's systems while you change. Give her solitude." Her characteristic red eyes had turned amber, her tentacle-like hair was tucked away, and her skin had become more purple. She could have been any number of near-human species under the hood. "How do I look?" she said, and Mad studied her for a second longer than required, such as when someone disembarked Mads and didn't instantly set off a station-wide alert. The docking bay was sufficiently occupied to supply him with a civilian jacket over his armor and a cap pulled low over his eyes. Obscurity, without being so packed that it's hard to walk around or stay close, Mads whispered as they made their way into the main concourse. "If anyone can tell us how hot it is, we'll go to Thorne's office first." The interior of the trading station was a labyrinth of hallways, market stalls, and dimly lit. The air smelled of unusual spices, machine oil, and an excessive number of species. Azura remained by Mad's side, her eyes searching continuously into a recycled air. Mad abruptly dragged Azure into a tiny passageway when they were halfway to the administrative area. "What is it?" she murmured. Hyman facial recognition, as his hand moved to his concealed blaster during the service passage. He gestured toward the main hallway, where tiny flying spheres glided among the people. But these weren't drones. Yazaru's visage darkened the last time, and they proceeded more quickly than I had anticipated. I was also furious and checked his communication. Device change of plans, they navigated the rear and we had to locate a public terminal. Hallways until they came to a line of information kiosks, where they put a credit card and started using the stations. As the headlines scrolled by, he growled, "New feeds, damn you, they're not wasting time." The screen showed a warning that a terrorist attack had destroyed Hegaimon. 10 million credit reward for 30,000 casualties, or a research station. Below the title were pictures of a blurry security still of Mads, which contained information that led to the capture of the criminals. Princess Azora's official photo in her royal attire during the rescue. According to Research Station Azora, they are already dictating the story that not all Mads have. Hegemon has imposed martial law in 3 additional systems, claiming security concerns after Azura's hand clinched as the attack used us as a pretext to increase their hold. "We must relocate Thorns because it is too dangerous, and my people will suffer as a result of this madman closing the stream and removing his credit ship. He may now turn us in for the prize, in which case I know someone who despises." She went deeper down the station's lowest level since Hegaimon likes money, more than anything else. Levels where the hallways became more cramped and the illumination became less bright. They went through 3 levels, sections that were obviously not intended for the general population. Twice they had to hide from security guards. And at last, they arrived at a dull door with only a faded symbol that looked like a stylized eye knocked in a certain way. A scanner briefly appeared from the wall, illuminating him with blue light. "Identity confirmed," a synthetic voice said. Declared, "State your business, rogue." "In search of safety and information for myself and one guest," Mads replied, and the door opened to reveal an unusually large room with holographic displays and servers displays a man with dark skin and silver-streaked hair sitting in the middle. Cybernetic implants that lit to a gentle blue were used to replace Rowan's eyes. Despite his intimidating appearance, the man's voice was friendly as he continued. "I wondered when you'd turn up on my doorstep again." Mad entered and motioned for Azora to follow him. "Hello, Cyrus." "We're in trouble when are you not?" Cyrus laughed as he fixed Azora with his mechanical eyes. "And your intriguing dermal disguise, Your Highness. But my systems are able to detect it." "Such things." Mads put a comforting touch on Azora's arm as she tensed. According to Cyrus, who was Confederate intelligence prior to the fall, he currently leads the most advanced independent. Cyrus pointed to his 3-sector information network and added, "I've been watching the fireworks you two have caused." Screens that continuously showed footage of the station's devastation. Quite the message, rogue, but it wasn't political. Asserted that I pursued the princess, perhaps the rest was a tactical necessity. Although you, Your Highness, have always been politically inclined, Cyrus went to Azora. You realize what's going on as Azora, the last royal of the final Free Confederation world, steps forward. Cyrus tapped his cybernetic. And I know better than most that stake hegemon won't stop until they have control over everything. When I declined to use my intelligence network for their advantage, Hegemon gave them these eyes as a parting present. He stood and went to a central console that displayed a galactic map with different regions marked in different hues. Is making a significant military push using your terrorist act as excuse. He clarified that 3 fighting groups had been organized to attack Aquilon, your world. Has 2 weeks or so until they show up in force, and the azure pad beneath her. Purple. Obviously, my father's fortifications won't be able to withstand that level of gunfire. The fleet isn't completely gone without the Confederation fleet, Cyrus stated. Playing with the holographic screen, he only looked at the map and became discouraged and angry. You're following Confederation vessels to see which ones haven't. Yes, Cyrus highlighted a dozen spots of light before being captured or wrecked. Primarily destroyers and frigates concealed in distant systems or nebulae, with a few cruisers, and he focused on a flickering symbol in the battleship's deep, unclaimed area. Hope was infused by the indefatigable Admiral Corps' flagship Korik that outlasted Azure. Flickering in her eyes with damage systems and a skeleton team. But sure, Mads crossed his arms, even though these ships are dispersed throughout half the galaxy, and would be picked up even if we could get in touch with them, leaving one by one in an attempt to go to Aquilon, unless Cyrus stated with a cunning grin that he displayed schematics of a Hegemon command ship on another screen, giving them cause to think they could win. This combat group's Dominion flagship, which is en route to Aquilon, is equipped with automated command protocols. Mads whispered that there was only one point of failure for all the hegemonic forces in the sector. Realizing how dawning, specifically, disables the Dominion causes the entire combat party to become disorderly and have to retreat. Hegemon commanders are infamously poor at manual coordination. Examining the schematics, Cyrus asked how we would possibly approach such a spacecraft. He created a data crystal that has clearance codes for a Hegemon supply, which is where things start to get interesting. Ship that will rendezvous with the Dominion in 4 days, as well as crew members who may be able to Mads, our fugitive buddies with a few minor alterations, took the crystal and met Cyrus's eyes. Why can't you aid us? Puts you in danger since I've watched Hegemon devour everything I used to safeguard. Cyrus's cybernetic eyes went a little dimmer. Maybe it's time for me to do more than observe the Hegemon supply vessel provisioner. Was a blocky, utilitarian craft that was just as uninspired as its name implied. Its cargo holds were crammed with equipment since it was built for function over form. Replacement parts and rations headed for the fighting group that is coming toward Aquilon in Mads adjusted the stiff gray cloth of his Hegemon logistics officer suit in the ship's small crew quarters. Uncomfortable against his skin, he added modest facial prosthetics and dyed his hair black to alter his image. "How do I look?" he questioned, turning to face Azora, who was dressed similarly to him. Just enough to fool casual inspection. Cyrus's sophisticated dermal modifiers had turned her complexion a pale green, and her tentacle-like hair had been fashioned into... Her original red eyes were concealed by brown contact lenses and a more traditional appearance. She smiled slightly in response, saying, "Like every other corporate drone I've ever had the displeasure of meeting." Specifically, 4 days had gone by since their encounter with Cyrus. Preparing by learning the Dominion's layout, remembering hegemon regulations, and practicing their cover personas for 4 days in close quarters had caused a change in their relationship. Mad refocused on the task and added, "Awareness neither had acknowledged a loud final equipment check. He opened inside a concealed compartment in what looked to be regular issue luggage were deconstructed firearms, explosives, and electronic countermeasures, all masquerading as harmless Cyrus's maintenance instruments. When Azura checked the little blaster hidden in her boot, she saw that the genuine inspection crew was diverted precisely as he had anticipated. Perhaps the remainder of his intelligence is similarly, the compartment was accurately closed by Mads, and we will be on board for around 12 hours. The communication system sounded provisioner before the Dominion's actual inspection team reported the diversion. "Are you authorized to dock at Bay 4 and transmit crew and cargo according to Dominion control?" The fake document Cyrus had given. There was transmitted by Manifest Azura as she proceeded to the communications console. After a tense period of stillness, the response was received, confirmed, and proceeded to docking Bay 4. Mads, the provisioner for the Dominion, let out a breath he hadn't known he. The supply ship's autopilot led them when the initial obstacle was removed. Through the window, the Dominion grew larger, a dagger-shaped warship bristling toward the enormous Hegemon flagship. With weapon placements, the light from neighboring stars is absorbed by the black hole. Up close, it's even more imposing, Azora said. "But size isn't everything." With forced humor, Mads retorted, "Remember that all we have to do is go to the command center and upload Cyrus's virus to the automatic systems." As docking clamps engaged, pressure equalized with a hiss. The provisioner trembled a little. Once the airlock indications went green, indicating that it was showtime, Mad remarked, carrying his bag of concealed equipment, "Keep in mind that Specialist Terran and Lieutenant Commander Hale are here to carry out a routine. After checking the life support systems, you enter the Dominion through the airlock, where a subordinate officer is waiting for you." The officer greeted Mads with a prefix while using a data pad. "Lieutenant Commander." "No, we didn't have your inspection scheduled until after Mads was adopted the next week." Lieutenant, in particular, the exhausted tone of a professional bureaucrat's schedules.